Let's talk about build to rent a little bit.
Yep.
Fannie Mae's got a new article about build to rent. These are, like you're building a, subdivision of single family homes, but instead of marketing them to folks that are going to buy those homes, they're going to be renting. Very less and less individuals can afford to buy a home, qualify mortgage, have the down payment.
Yep.
A lot of people want to live in a house, want to have a little backyard, and so this is where BTR comes in. It's a still relatively small segment over the overall market, but it is growing by leaps and bounds, especially in the Sun Belt, but really all across the country now.
Yep.
What does Fannie Mae have to say? What's the overview?
It's kind of funny. CBRE had like the exact same article. It was a build to rent overview. It talked about the range of housing types. It talked about the demand drivers and the types of renters and all of this kind of stuff. And it was almost like those times when movies would come out, like Deep Impact and Armageddon,
yeah.
Ants and A Bug's Life, or what is it, Volcano and Dante's Peak. Well, these
nice rendition.
These two articles were like very, very similar, and but they're also really useful as these overviews of a very quickly growing sector of the housing market. Now, Fannie Mae defines build to rent as a kind of larger group than kind of a specific. It's not just single-family homes. They are townhouses, which are attached to one-unit homes, typically with 2 stories. They're horizontal apartments, which are smaller one-unit homes, usually with a yard, typically permitted as single multifamily development. Then you've got your single-level row homes, single-family detached, and a mixture of them. CBRE has roughly similar things, but basically you can kind of sum it up. If you're not stacking housing units on top of each other and you're managing a group of them in the same location, you might be a build-to-rent. Have you ever? Anyways, construction, it talks about, and it's heading up dramatically so recently. But many of the units that fall under the Census Bureau's definition of build-to-rent are constructed by small-scale developers, building only a few units at a time. Yep. Larger-scale developments of 25 or more are a subset of the total. Volumes have been relatively small, never exceeding 70,000 units completed in a given year. So build-to-rent construction took off, but I think it was just starting at that smaller base. So you see how build-to-rent completions increased 190% in 2022.
Because, on one hand, you'll have the single-family home developers who are like, they've got the land and they've got it all, the pre-development work, and they're like, maybe I could just build these homes and I can just sell it to one buyer.
Yeah.
So I need to turn these into things into rentals.
Yeah.
No, I use the accent.
No. I picture the Texan with the big hat from The Simpsons.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, you got like multifamily developers who are like, well, we could do that.
Yeah.
But the single family home developers are like, they're going to have to finance that construction, without a buyer in mind necessarily. So they're like, how about I build, 10, houses or 25 or 30. They're not going to do 100. Homes just to see, how it works, because it's a relatively new concept, especially maybe in a market that's relatively new.
Yeah.
For a multifamily developer, they're going to look at it like, okay, how am I going to manage this? Because the single family home developers are like, well, I don't know how to manage, apartments.
Yeah.
A multifamily developer, they want to make sure they've got the economies of scale to manage it. So probably look at building a larger, a larger development. And that's where you're going to see, I think, a lot more of the mixed options of, you've got some townhomes, you've got some flats, you've got a couple, cottages or houses. You kind of have different product types. I can see really successful, especially if that's mixed in with some mixed use.
I would like that too, even just like visually. Like I've been in some, I've lived in a neighborhood that it wasn't necessarily a build to rent at the time.
Most people were renting,
but I'm guessing most people were renting. But even the ones that owned it, like all the houses kind of look the same, and it can be, especially since it's spread out over a large area, it can tend to look a little monotonous if you're not really kind of paying attention. But that's some of the sacrifices I'm guessing that are necessary in order to kind of maintain and run this efficiently. You can't. It's never going to be like each house is made by an architect. This is all. It's pretty much stamped so that you can.
Just got the money.
Yeah.
I mean, you could. I mean, I think obviously there's some really good designs out there that try to
planned
mix
communities
things up
and stuff.
a little bit. But you're trying to be efficient because it's expensive to build, and you want to try to make the rents obtainable. For the market, you don't want to price yourself out.
Yeah.
So some of those decisions have to be made.
They talk about demand as well. And demand definitely spiked in the past few years. They say likely due to several factors: low for sale single family inventory coupled with high home purchase prices. They kept many households in the rental sector. Built to rent offered larger unit sizes than the traditional multifamily sector, which became increasingly attractive with work from home and stuff like that. Supply was also spurred by the maturation of mid and large scale single family rental owners who had built their management capacity. Ooh. So like they're renting it spot out, and then they're like, oh, wait, maybe we can do it this other way. Instead of single family rentals scattered out throughout the city, maybe let's get that acreage that big Texan in white hat.
You're spending all your time running across town. It's fun.
These owners became eager to build or buy these developments rather than hold or manage them, just like what you said. And as for renter profiles, this is what's interesting. They look a lot like home buyers. Median income is about like $100K, and they're planning on buying a home after renting, but they're also more likely to be renters by choice rather than renters by necessity. So these build-to-rent tenants appear to prefer build-to-rent over single-family rentals. I like this. Because of the on-site maintenance services, which 84% of tenants reported as important, and that their units were new. I was a single-family renter at the time, and I will tell you this, and maybe I was not savvy at the time. I wasn't thinking, oh man, I got to rent something that's going to be maintained. I just expected it to be maintained.
Well, so Katrina talks about this a lot of the time, of the expectations of a renter in a single-family home, especially like a scattered site. You're renting a home and wherever in a city that's not in a rental community, and the expectation for service and maintenance versus living in an apartment community.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you're living in the apartment community, you've got folks who are like, hey, I need my light bulb changed. Every little thing, it's not you. I'm just going to put a work order in versus if you're renting just like you described. And I've done the same thing. I used to I lived in a duplex, like in Broad Ripple.
Yeah.
And I mean,
something goes wrong, I'm going to try to fix it.
I'm going to try to fix it and figure it out. And only in a worst case scenario am I going to call the landlord. Because I know they've got to send somebody over. Now, if something's broken, I don't know how to fix that. You're going to give them a call. But it's different because it's not like, hey, I know you got somebody right over there that can fix it. And I'm pissed off, come here and fix it. So it's that level of expectation. So we've talked about, do we need to have like a little bit of a reset of what those expectations are? Same if we want to provide really top-notch level of service, and it's like, I guess if you need your light bulb, switch out. But like if you're looking at 100 work orders you got to do, you have to run across to switch a light bulb.
It kind of plays into what I was talking before. It's like there is it could be a phase of life or something, or just like living in a house is a little bit different, I think, maybe than living in an apartment, and it's this. Man's home is his castle, maybe, or something like that. But there is a sense of like ownership.
Is it a tragedy of the commons a little bit of like?
I think it could be.
It's like we're sharing walls, we're sharing a hallway. It's not my responsibility to keep the hallway clean. Yeah. If anything, I own. There's 20 people in this hallway. It's like maybe I own a 20th of it, but like that's really which it is. The landlord and the maintenance team's responsibility to keep it clean. Versus you're at a home, that little sidewalk in front of you, like.
No one else to blame but yourself.
No one else to blame.
Yeah.
And there's snow on it, shovel it.
Yeah. No,
you're expecting somebody to come across town just to shovel your little sidewalk.
I know. And then you're allowed to take pride in your work too. Right? Like that's what I was thinking. It's like you can really, a lot of people do like to mow the lawn and landscape or whatever it is, and there's little things that you can do.
Mowing a lawn though, you still want landlord needs to do, because if you let residents, if you say, hey, how about you mow the lawn, all of a sudden they miss mowing the lawn, which happens like every time, even if you own it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're getting fines from the city. It doesn't look good. So there's certain things that as a landlord specifically like you need to do, and you don't want the resident to do. You don't want the resident to like, for example, to like change the like heat on their hot water heater or stuff like that.